Good morning, and welcome to the latest episode of Things People Don't Know How to Do Anymore. And I've been talking to a few of my friends about things like this, and we're going to see if we can't remedy some of that. And what I'm talking about here is quill wings. These are duck quill feather tip or duck quill wings, duck slips, and these are made from a matched pair of duck quills. Mallard, pintail, teal, widgeon, canvasback, whatever. All ducks will work for this. But basically, what we're going to do is make these sort of old school wings. And it's becoming sort of a lost art. There are a few guys out there who do them. There's a few guys out there who do them really, really well. Stephen Fernandez from California is one that immediately comes to mind. He does just the most beautiful duck quill wings. And has always been a guy whose flies I admire. And so I've stolen a few tips from him, and I'm going to show you how I do these duck quill wings. The pattern here is sort of immaterial. This is sort of a March Brown version, but you could tie, obviously whatever colors, combination of colors that you wanted. But this is sort of a mottled brown. Ginger hackle, and this is a pretty typical kind of old school East Coast Eastern pattern. I shouldn't say East Coast, but Eastern pattern. And I'm going to show you how to do it. So there's a few little tricks, obviously. And when speaking in duck quills, I just got to tell you, they take practice. If your first one comes out well, comes out even reasonable, you're doing pretty good. I practiced and practiced and practiced when I was a kid to learn to do these, and I honestly don't do them that much anymore. But every time I do, I enjoy it. It's something that's sort of compelling. It's a challenging technique, and makes you feel like you still got it. So we'll see if I still got it this morning. So at any rate, I'm going to tie this on a size 14 100, Tiemco 100. Obviously whatever size you want. And one thing that I do like, sort of a modern take on all this, is I like to use Nanosilk. This is 30 Denier 18-aught Nanosilk. And I'm going to use white here, just so that it shows up a little better for you. You could, use whatever color you want, but I'm using white, and you'll see I'll color it at the end to kind of take away the white. But the reason I like this thread is it's very slippery, so it'll slide through my pinch wrap very well, and it creates very little bulk on the hook, which is going to be an advantage here. The tie down of the wings is a relatively bulky maneuver, and it's sometimes hard to hide, but with this new fine, super strong thread, it becomes much easier. So I'm going to start this thread just up behind the eye, and I'm going to build a thread base. You can go, midpoint on the hook or so, and then I'll come forward up to the eye again, and back to about, I tend to put my wings too far back, as I've been kind of playing with these this morning. I noticed that I still do that. Make sure we're focused up there. There we go. So I'm gonna say that I'm gonna have the thread at about the 80% point is what I'm looking for there. And what I want to work with are a matched pair of duck wing quills. And you can see I've got these. I spoke in another video on the no hackle, I think. I've got these matched up. So, the first feather from the right wing, first feather from the left wing, tape those together. And then do the same with the second, so you've got exact matched pairs from the same duck. That's ideally the way to do this. And I got these from John Barr years ago. John had the patience to go through, and literally there's hundreds of them in this bag he gave me, and it has made the job a lot easier. I will say that prep time was well worth it for me. John never ended up using them; he gave them to me. But at any rate, that's a good way to go about it. But I want a right and a left wing, and what I want to look for here is on the edge here. If I hold this just right, I want a really nice crisp edge, a clean edge on the tips of those fibers. Let me find a bad example. So you can see the tip on that's a little wispy, and it's not that you can't do the wings out of something with a little more wisp to it. And honestly, if I was practicing, I would use these up, no problem. They'll come out fine. But the wing profile, the wing shape comes out a little sharper if you've got that nice little crisp edge. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with the wings. And the reason I start with the wings, you can put the tail on first. But the reason I start with the wings is it might take you a couple tries. So then that way you're, if you're frustrated and you throw everything down and you walk away, it's not the end of the world because you don't have, 7/8 of a fly tied. So this is a brand new set. And seeing as we're doing this on video, I'm going to come right into the sweet spot of the feather. And I'm going to cut 2 slips, one from each side, in the same spot on the feather. So I've cut one there, and you can see I'll just pull that out. I'll set that on my desk. And I've cut one on this other side. You can just kind of see my cut there. I'll pull that out. And I want these, when I'm eyeballing the length, I want these to be about the same width. We'll have a chance to sort of fine tune this a little bit. And one thing I want to look for is make sure I don't have any weird curled fibers. And let's see if this shows up. See the leading edge of this wing? See this last fiber right here? See up here how it doubles back on itself? That will cause havoc later. So I'm going to take out, really, it's just that single strand. And there, as I separated it with my scissors, you can see that it's got a little defect in it. So now I've got a nice clean slip. I'm going to do the same thing to the other section. This one's in pretty good shape, but now that I've narrowed the first one down, I've got to narrow the second one down as well. And then I'm going to take these 2 feathers, or 2 slips, still got one weird one in there. Get rid of him. There we go. And I'm going to lay them inside to inside so that they're curving away from each other, so they're opposed. And I try to get one edge lined up, typically the front edge, and I'll get the tips even. And then I want to look at them from both sides and make sure they're both the same width. And these are pretty much right where I want them to be. And you can see those slips are about as wide as the gap of the hook, maybe even a bit wider. Owing to the Stephen Fernandez influence, Steve ties his with really big, wide slips. They just make big, juicy, beautiful wings. So I tend to go a little on the thicker side. So, in comparison to the shank, I'd say that's half a shank length long. So I'm going to take these 2 slips, and again, they're opposed. The curves are going forward, the tips are going forward, the high point. Some of the old school stuff actually had the wings tied backwards, where the curve came backwards, and as you sort of experiment with this stuff, you can kind of do whatever you want. But I'm going to take and square these up, make sure their tips are even. And you can see my tip shape. It's just sort of a nice gentle arc. I don't want them too squared off. Because I don't want to start to pull the marrying of the fibers apart. So I want to kind of maintain the natural elasticity of the feather. You can see on that as I'm holding it here on this bottom edge here, that little fuzz in between each fiber. That's sort of the Velcro that holds each of these individual fibers together. These are, you've worked with feathers before. These are individual fibers that are just sort of stuck together. So the trick here is to try to keep them stuck together while we tie them in and maintain that shape. So I'm going to take these 2 feathers and I'm going to measure them about a shank length long, and I just kind of slide my finger up to the bend of the hook, maybe even a hook length long, we'll say. I tend to make these a little long as well. And then I'll put that point right where my thread is, and I'm going to pinch the hook and the quills together in my fingers. So I've got everything straight up and down here, and I've got the hook, or the slips right down on the hook. You can see I'm touching the hook. I've got a hold of everything right here. Now I'm going to draw out some thread out of my bobbin, and I'm going to come up on my near side between my thumb and the quill, and then I'm going to come down on the far side. Now I'm pinching that thread. You can see the feathers have not been pulled down yet. Now I'm going to pull the thread up again on my near side, and I try to line that all up. You can see my thread up here on top. I try to line that all up so that my thread wraps are stacked on top of each other. And then I'm going to very firmly I'm going to pull up on the thread and let that loop of thread inside my fingers slide down to the hook. Then I'll get another turn in there. And these secondary turns, you can see they'll affect the butts a little bit more. I can kind of let those slide back And really what I'm doing here, I'll get 4 or 5 of them, is I want to get those butt ends anchored to the hook shank. Now that we feel like we have, I can let go and our wings are still intact, which is the whole idea. So now I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to wrap back up to the base of the wings. And you can kind of hold on to this if you need to. Just make sure that they're anchored. And you can see where this thin thread comes in really handy. See this little piece right here that we lost? No big deal, we'll just get them out of there. Sometimes you'll slice a fiber out of there. That's just, it happens. As long as you don't slice 10 of them out, you'll be in fine shape. Now what I'll do is I'm going to lift these butt ends up and I'm going to cut them at a long angle. So I kind of keep them low and cut at a long angle there. Hopefully didn't nick my thread. I didn't. And I'll wrap down over those. And I don't worry too much about smoothing this off tremendously right here. This thread work on the hook, we're going to have a chance to cover that. It's not a big deal. We're going to do a Biot body on this one, and I'll show you we're going to smooth that out, so we got plenty of chance there. Now, what I want you to see here is the buckle at the bottom of the wing. And on your side, it's showing really well. We've got the light just right. You can see how the base of that, there's maybe 100 fibers there. And they're all crushed down into a single tie-down point right there. I'm going to bring my thread right up to the base so you can kind of see where the initial wrap was. Now I'm going to close my fingers under the hook and I'm going to pick the wings up and slide them back. Now one of the things when you do this is you want to hold this very tightly, and we're going to build a little thread dam up against this front edge. And this is where the GSP thread, the Nanosilk thread, can become a bit of a liability. Is when you're trying to build a thread dam with this thread does not stack very well because it's so slippery. So you can see I'm going to work back and forth so that I've got a gradual slope up to the base of the wings. And I want to wedge those wraps right up against the base so that I can stand them up. And so far I'm feeling pretty good about this. Hold on to this thread and I'll turn this. You can see the wings are sort of stuck together on their front edge. They're not separated yet. And I'm not terribly worried about that just yet. So you can see our overall shape of the wings here. Now what I like to do, and this is a Fernandez technique, and what I've done up to here is sort of how these wings are traditionally done. But what Steve does is he's going to take a parachute wrap around the base of these wings, and that will compress these bases into a nice tight little nub there at the bottom. And it just sort of finishes the shape of the wing just beautifully. Now, one thing I've noticed when I do this is if you don't sort of counteract your thread tension, I'm going to make a clockwise turn in my case. I want to turn the wings a little bit the other direction so that thread wrap doesn't cant the wings off one direction or the other away from the hook. So I'm going to hold on to that wing, and I'm going to pick up the thread on the far side and come all the way around the base of the wing 2 times. Then I'll come under the hook and back around behind the wings. And that thread wrap you can see actually really clearly there. You can see that little parachute wrap at the base has just pinched the base of those wings down nice and tight and clean. So we've got a really good wing shape. I honestly couldn't ask for this to come out better. This is working really well, and it's always a little tenuous. So hopefully I don't screw this up from here. Now I'll take the tips of my scissors with them closed and separate the 2 wings. I just kind of slide them down in between. You can kind of use your finger to press them down. You can sort of alter the shape of the wings a bit by sort of messing with them. You can kind of round the front end up. I like to use the scissor tips just because they're smoother than my fingers are, generally speaking. And traditionally those wings are canted slightly forward like that. You could get them a little bit more upright. You can actually just stand them upright with your finger. But I try not to mess with them too much. I'm going to say I'm pretty happy there. My wings are the same size and shape. I've got a nice buckle. You can see the cup on both sides. So I'm feeling pretty good about that set of duck quill wings. Now, one thing that I'll do to these, and this is the liability with duck quill wings, and everybody says this all the time, is they just don't hold up, they fray. And they do. That's true. These fibers are incredibly strong from north to south, but east to west they'll fray apart very easily. And you can put a little cement or vinyl cement on them, but if you put it on the tips of the wings, what you run into is you'll make the wings stiff and they start to twist your tippet. So what I like to do is I'll take some vinyl cement. This is Flex Seal. And I'm going to take my tube and put it right down between the wings. And I'll kind of squeeze out a little drop and just drag it between the wings. I've got maybe even more on there than I wanted. Just at the base. And what that'll do is sort of cement those bases in place so that the rest of the fibers are not so prone. It's got a little bit more support there at the bottom end. All right, so now we're going to go on with the rest of our fly. I'm pretty darn happy with that. Yeah, yay me. First fly on Wednesday morning. It's not the first fly. I tied one more earlier. I tied half of a fly. Just in the spirit of being honest about it. Now for the tail on this, and like I say, use what you got. I've got a nice little dark barred ginger Cree speckled badger cape here that I got from Whiting Farms. It's just beautiful, and it's been sitting on my desk, and I've been using it on a lot of stuff. But I've got a spade hackle off of it, and I'm going to take, in the case of this size 14, it might be 10 or 12 fibers, and peel them off into a nice, tidy little bundle. I got one weird strand in there. Nice little bundle like so. And these have a curve to them. And I always say if your fibers for the tail have a curve, always try to tie it in curve up. So I'm going to tie this in at the bend. I'll get a couple turns on it. And that's not curve up, that's curve toward you. Like so. And then I'll come forward over those butt ends. Kind of anchor the rest of those wing butts down while I'm at it. You can see our little tail there, just sort of a splayed hackle fiber tail. Nothing fancy, and this is not the point of the fly anyway, but just a standard tail. Now, I have been using these dyed turkey biots from my friend Stephen Hakens, and these are Magpie, let's see, Magpie Materials Wild Turkey Biots. And Stephen goes through and cuts the short cruddy ones off the bottom and the long wispy ones off the top. And you've got these beautiful wild turkey biots that have a little modeling to them. And they're really soft, nice biots that wrap just beautifully. So I'm going to take a turkey biot here. And in the case, I just cut it from the quill, but you can see everybody talks about the notch. The notch is on the top side here. I'm going to tie this in notch up so that the ribbed edge, which is, as I'm holding this, on the bottom, will follow my turn with the natural curve of the feather. Now, one of the things you run into with turkey biots is the base of the biot is much wider than the tip. And on a fly like this where I've mounted the wings already, as I get up toward the wing, the front edge of this turn, as I get up here, the front edge is going to lead way too far forward, and it's going to start to push my wings. So the way to get around that is I'm going to take my scissors. I'll try to do this where you can see it, but I gotta see it more. And I'm going to cut the front edge off of that biot, like so. So I just thin that down. And you can see there's a little kind of high spot in the center there. Not a big deal. You can come in and get rid of that too if you wanted, but that's really not going to be an issue. The way we're going to overlap this biot as we wrap up, that piece will get hidden, but we're going to have a thin biot to tie off at the butt end rather than that big wide feather. So I'm going to come back, bring my thread back to the bend. I'm going to tie this feather in by its tip with the edge, the stand-up edge facing down. And I'll wrap forward over that tip. And then I do, on a 14, I'll do a little bit of thread work to sort of build a taper. But a lot of your taper comes from the overlap of the biot, so not much thread work there. Now we'll come in with a little shot of super glue. This is always a good idea on any kind of biot or quill body. I'm going to put just a little glue on the hook shank here. I'll kind of smear that around a little bit. And then I'm going to hunt a little bit for my hackle pliers, and I'm going to grab the tip of this in my hackle pliers, and what I'm using here are Jorgensen hackle tweezers. You can see they've got, let's see, I'll put it on the screen here. They've got a little wire, and then there's a little piece of grit inside there to grab a hold of the end of the biot. Now, when I fold this biot, when I come my first turn here, I want the stand-up edge, and you can see how I can sort of maneuver this a bit. Let me get my hands out of the way. Maneuver this a bit so I'm not disrupting the tail. The stand-up edge is on the back edge of that turn. And then as I wrap forward, I can overlap, and I want to evenly space that stand-up edge as I'm wrapping. And I'm going to be able to come right up to the base of the wings here without disrupting them. You can see if I had left this front edge, that biot would be too wide to get up there. I'd have a big empty space and potentially disrupt my wings. So that's why I trimmed that front edge off. Then I'll tie that off with a couple of turns. Get a couple good tight turns on there. And this is where this Nanosilk thread is just lovely stuff for this kind of thing. Just no bulk at all. You know, a fair amount of thread work there and no bulk put in there whatsoever. Prop those wings up just a bit. All right, now I'm going to take a barred ginger feather, barred ginger speckled Cree badger feather that is appropriately sized for the hook. And I like to undersize my hackle. I don't do that Eastern thing where it's big and oversized. I just can't bring myself to do it. So I'm going to take this feather and I'm going to trim the butt end off, and then I'm going to strip a section of bear stem that's equal to about from where my thread is hanging here at the front edge of the abdomen up to my index point, so about an eye length behind the hook eye, maybe half an eye length behind the hook eye. So I want bear stem that's at least that long. Like so. If I hold that right in there, you can kind of see my measurement. And then on the inside of the turn, so if you're looking at the front side of the feather, the inside of the turn in this case is going to be this side. I'm going to wrap the feather that way. I'm going to strip a few more fibers off the inside of that turn so that I can stand that first turn up right up on edge. Now what I like to do is make sure that I'm pretty darn close to where those fibers start. And I'll start to tie this feather in behind the wings and come right up to the wings. Now, if I give you a little sneak peek there, you can see that stem's a little long. It comes out to the hook eye. This is the point that I would trim it off. So I'm just going to nick that a little shorter. And then I can come forward over that stem right on up to the eye. Now, typically I'll come back again just to smooth that off. Anchor everything in tightly, and since I said I'd do it, I'm not sure if this is a great idea, but I'm going to color this thread just so the white thread doesn't show, and hopefully it'll still show for you guys, but I'm going to color this thread with this is a sepia marker that sort of matches the color of the fly. Yeah, I wanted the white thread so that you could follow my path, as it were. So I'll bring the thread right up just behind the index point. So now I'm going to pick up my hackle pliers again. And I'm going to grab the tip of my feather, and I'm going to stand this first turn up. And if you've got, this is going to be perfect. If you've got a fiber that's sticking out kind of backwards, just grab them and peel them off. That's 65% more fish. I'm going to make this next turn right in front of that, and another turn right up against the back of the wings. And you could even slide those wings forward and sneak that turn in there. And then as I come in front, I'm going to pull those wings back and put the next turn right up against the front edge. And I'm just trying to get a nice clean hackle collar here, very vertical. Now, I'm going to back my thread up a few turns. You can see actually this is going to work nicely because I have the colored brown thread. I'm going to back my thread up a little bit, pull that feather up, and come straight up and over with very vertical turns with the thread to get a good clean tie off there. Then I can come in and nick the tip of that feather out. I missed one fiber there. We got him. Now I can build my little thread head. And it's just going to take a few turns to smooth off that stub end. And I need a little bit more brown thread to complete my whip finish here. So I'm going to color him up a bit. Then I'll come in and whip finish. Just a nice tight, tidy little head there. And nick that thread out. Push my scissor blades down. That head cement's just starting to goo up a little bit there. We can kind of get the wings in their final placement. You can see I can put the scissors between the wings and then sort of flatten the blades to spread those wings out a bit. And gosh, we're looking pretty good. We'll take a little shot of head cement, put it on that thread head. I just like to use the little pin that's in the applicator bottle. And you can see that thread head is a little bit back from the hook eye. And that's sort of an ode to the old-timey stuff where they tied the fly on with a trail knot. They'd leave a little extra room there. But gosh, that came out pretty good. Pretty good. I like those wings. Let me give you a front view here. Get a hold of him. So from the front side, you can see our wings are perfectly curved away from each other. Same shape, same size. I'm making a big deal out of it because it is a big deal. That's not an easy thing to do, and it takes a lot of practice. So I just feel like people don't do these little bit more challenging techniques. Everybody's a star with a perdigon, but you get to a fly that's a little bit more complicated, and there's not many people that could do them. Well, now you can. So get a bunch of duck quills and sit down and be patient and practice, and then you'll have this tool in your toolbox as well. But that's my quill wing March Brown. Like I say, not necessarily a specific pattern. We just were trying to get the point across on the wings, but obviously mix and match the colors however you like. But there we are. I'm gonna maybe get a little more focus on our wing here, just so you can get a good solid view of him. Oh, that looks good. Anyway, that's him. I'm happy with that. I hope you guys have as good a day as I'm going to have now that this came out right. There we go. I'm Charlie Craven, and your mom called and said that you should hit like and subscribe, so don't disappoint your mother. Thanks for watching, guys. You guys take care.